friends, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm coming at you in a little bit of hot mess mom mode. And I almost didn't do this video, but I was like, you know what? These are my people, they understand. So we have recently been traveling and we had a 6-hour delay on our flight, finally got back, got to our car and our car wouldn't start. So it has been craziness and I was like, all right, maybe I'll put this video off, but it was requested by a client, so here we go. Today we are continuing our brush series and we are talking about the 3D brush. In this brush series, we have been talking about how to use one brush to get your entire makeup look, and then also talking about the pros and the cons of the brush and maybe what brushes you can combine it with to get exactly what you're looking for in the simplest manner possible. So today we're gonna talk about the 3D brush. And this brush is probably my least favorite brush for a beginner, yet it is the most popular brush because we're talking about Seint's 3D foundation. So people see 3D foundation, they pick up the 3D brush. And while I do love it, I absolutely love it, once you get accustomed to the makeup, I do find that it is not super beginner friendly. So if you wanna learn more, check out today's video. I'll be sure to show you kind of the traditional way that people apply with the 3D brush and some tweaks that you can make to get better coverage and a smoother finish and still do it with just this one brush and your finger and the perfector. I'm gonna get started by showing you kind of the traditional method that you see on social media where people use this one brush and they get it on their face fast. But here's the issue. The number one problem that people have when they switch to a cream-based makeup is that they're using too much, and this brush lends to over application straight from the beginning because it is a very dense brush. It picks up a lot of product, which means it deposits a lot of product on the face. And these tins, you guys, are 100% pigment. So a very little goes a long way. So what ends up happening is people start digging in, and then let me show you typically how the application goes. And what we're doing now is filling in the gaps. So they'll start with contour and then they'll fill in the gaps. And typically dig the brush in like that and start sweeping it over a larger portion of the face. Right there, we have contour, main highlight shade, brightener under the eye and in the T-zone area. And now we'll move to lip and cheek. Let's do some bronzer. And that is traditionally how you see the 3D brush used to apply your 3D foundation. You start with your contour, you fill in the gaps with your main highlight shade, you brighten with the bunny tail underneath the eye, down into the T-zone, apply your blush with this side, a little bit of bronzer on the high points of the face, and you're done. Okay, I'm here close up. Do you see how this really lacks coverage on this acne here, on this sunspot? And do you see how much texture we have under the eye? This is not bad. There is no like right or wrong with makeup per se, but as somebody who has color concerns, like it did nothing for the scar on my nose, my redness is popping through right here. Was that fast? It was. But is there a better way to use this brush? And frankly, for beginners, there's probably better brushes to use. If you wanna see a really good demonstration of a really good beginner brush, I would check out the blush and bronzer brush that we did in our brush series. But as promised, I will show you how to get a better finish with this brush. First things first, if you are dealing with redness, rosacea, hyperpigmentation, sunspots, dark under eyes, acne, any sort of skin discoloration, including something like vitiligo or hyper or hypopigmentation, you need to take your makeup from the main foundation shade, contour, and brightener to a color corrector foundation shade, contour, and brightener. Because, let me nerd out on you for a minute here. Have you ever wondered, like as you've aged, why your makeup that you've always used just doesn't look the same anymore. It's worked forever, all of a sudden it doesn't work anymore. It usually comes down to the fact that our skin is different as we age. Like as we were younger, we thought we had dark circles. We thought maybe we had some redness. You know, some people still struggle with acne when they're younger, but overall we had a much more even skin tone. So when you're younger, you typically pick a foundation shade or a powder that matches what's called your undertones. So as your Seint artist, I'm looking at the lightest points on your face, under the brow, along the jawline, to determine what your undertones are. And I incorporate undertones into your 3D foundation with your brightening shade. Then I'm looking at, well, what is the main skin tone that I see? And that's how I match you to your main highlight shade, which is also known as your foundation shade. And for me, that's like this general area here, some of this larger area along the jawline. So I have like a neutral complexion there. And then my undertones are white. But as we age, we get what I would consider overtones. And that's what the makeup doesn't always account for unless you add a color corrector. It's also why your old foundation that's matched to your undertones doesn't look the same, because this undertone here, which is white, is so very different than the overtone that I have, which is a whole lot of redness. So there is an easy fix to that, and it is incorporating a shade to take care of your overtones so that then you can use your traditional foundation and concealer, which we call a brightener, as you normally would, but you've taken care of the deepest, darkest points of your skin first, so they no longer are in stark contrast to what you used to match your makeup to, which was just like, what's my skin tone? So we have so many skin tones as we age that you want to account for the deepest and darkest ones. And as your artist, I will do that for you. So if you want to get a custom color match, that's almost why I recommend 3 shades to literally almost everybody, because they are trying to account for some sort of skin discoloration that is bothersome to them. So you will get a color corrector shade from me, which takes care of your melasma, your rosacea, hyperpigmentation, redness, acne, a main foundation shade, which most closely matches your skin tone, and then a brightening shade, which will match your undertones, and we can strategically apply them in the thinnest layers possible to still get a natural skin-like finish. And I'm gonna show you how we can do that right now with the 3D brush, but I am going to incorporate the use of my finger, because in these small areas, I do not want to put an excess of makeup. The more makeup you put into areas of fine lines, wrinkles, or texture, the more those fine lines, wrinkles, and texture are gonna show. It's also true that the lighter and brighter that you go in areas of darkness, which for most of us is the under eye, the more that texture shows. So this simple incorporation of a color corrector, and the color corrector shade does matter. Your artist will match you to the one that is appropriate for you. A lot of people get matched to a contour to take care of their redness. Now here's the thing. Can it work in some situations? Yes, and if you're using it and it works, that's great. You might be one of those situations. But understand this, contours are ashy, which means they have a gray base. So do they color correct that redness? They do zap it out, but they often leave you feeling, people explain it to me like I felt like I had like I looked dead. And that's because instead of a color corrector that matches your darkness but brings warmth to the skin, which makes your skin look alive, you're using a color corrector which makes the skin look ashy, and then you look more sallow than you did when you started, and you're putting a lot of product over top to combat that, and then it almost always ends up like a mess. And I have found that the shade looks very deceiving online. Like people, I'll match people, and a lot of people get matched to shades like amber, mango, and papaya for color correctors, and they're like, that looks straight up orange. And trust me when I tell you, I totally get it. When my artist matched me to mango, I was like, what is she even thinking? But I was like, listen, my color is seeping through. My original artist was no longer with Seint, so I had to get on YouTube, find me a new artist to actually take care of the skin color concerns that I had. And she was like, mango all day. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna give this a whirl. And I'm telling you, there's a reason that our team calls it Magic Mango, because it literally takes that discoloration, zaps it out, and still leaves warmth in your skin so you don't have that dead look. So when you're using the 3D brush, it just doesn't have a small enough end for my liking for areas around the eye or to spot treat things like acne. Like you'll see this acne popped right through, and I didn't use a color corrector, but if I even tried to use this brush on these spots, it wouldn't work. This brush is just too large and too dense for that. So what I'm gonna do if I wanna use one brush is I'm going to incorporate the use of my finger. This will distribute the lightest amount of makeup because I can tap my finger in, and now I can use the warmth of my finger to dissipate that over like a larger portion. And I'm going to now color correct that darkness that you see under the eye. I'm gonna do the same thing with this scar that I have on the nose, which literally now is gone compared to what I had before. Now, I have a lot of redness to account for, so I could then take this brush, tap in just one time, and over this larger portion of redness, buff this small circular motion, buff this into the redness that you see. And it is at first going to make the skin look warmer, but we are gonna put our main highlight shade on top of that. I take into account when I select your main highlight shade, what your color corrector is. So I combine the color of the color corrector with your main shade, and that is how I match most closest to your skin tone. So now we are removing that redness. Come to these broken capillaries, some redness on the side of my nose. And if I were to incorporate another brush for this, I personally would grab the detail brush because it has this small end, but also because it's the perfect contour brush. So this one brush can do all of your color correction in small areas, your brightener in small areas, and give you more precise contour so you don't have as much like sweeping and dragging down because we want our contour to lift. As somebody who struggles with acne, even using my finger in this, you see how that helps? But you also see how I got it where I didn't need it? Because you only color correct where it's needed. So if you have acne or acne scarring, go ahead and pick up the spot brush, and then you can pinpoint that acne or acne scarring, and you can use the other side of the brush to just kind of let it dissipate. This one here, I picked. Once you pick it, you're increasing the texture, and we can't make texture go away. But by pinpoint application, we can reduce the look of texture. So if I was just using the 3D brush, I would do my best with my finger to only get onto those acne spots, like as close to the point of the discoloration as possible. You may have also noticed that I started with my color corrector, and here's why. Traditionally, you see a lot of people start with contour, and I think that's really helpful to understand the one layer of 3D foundation concept because your contour does give you coverage. However, if you are somebody that struggles with redness in this area, I hear all the time, I'm putting on my contour, you tell me it's ashy, but it's pulling me red. And that's because you're not color correcting the redness first. So I can't put my contour down first if I have redness in that area. So I just slightly tweak my order of operation. I start with my color corrector. And remember, because my coverage comes from my color corrector and my main shade, I'm gonna go to my main shade next. And now, instead of swiping into the tin, which this brush just really lends towards swiping because of the density, people often do this. Instead, I want you to just tap, get a little bit on top, and now press this on anywhere that you would traditionally put your foundation. Oh, I had a little bit of redness here on the chin that I didn't account for, so I'm tapping my color corrector, and now this is my main shade. And since I don't want to move that color corrector, I want it to be as precise with it as possible, I'm not going to swipe this on. Instead, I'm going to stipple. And this combination of that color corrector, which was warm, is now being toned down by the neutral color that I will give you for your main shade. And it's this combination that's gonna match my neck, which is how I prefer my makeup to look. If you prefer your makeup to be darker or lighter than your neck, I will account for that in your color match. I am gonna go in with my finger and my main shade around the eye. Highly textured area, less is more. And there will be a magic step here at the end where we will remove any excess that is sitting in fine lines and wrinkles, or where I may still, even after 3.5 years of wearing this makeup, still may have applied too much. But you can already see the difference in the coverage by just being a little bit more precise and using a color corrector. So there we have color corrector, main shade, and now I'm gonna show you how to contour with this brush. While these bristles are dense, which is great for contouring, this brush is really wide. So I am going to squeeze it together so that I can have a little bit more control, and I'm also not gonna swipe into that contour. I am gonna tap, and your contour is a little bit drier, and it's meant to be a little bit drier because it's meant to go in more of a specific area and not blend away as easily. So all I'm doing is going along the top of the hairline, and I am stopping right here because as we age, we tend to get like a divot here, like a little bit of a recession. And the gem of 3D foundation is that it adds highlight and contour to your face so that you can create both dimension and get coverage. Darkness recedes. That's the beauty of contour. That's why it's ashier and not typically warmer, because it's going to make a large forehead look smaller. It's going to make your jawline look more snatched, your cheekbones look more lifted. But I want to stay away from any portion of the face that I don't want to recede. And I don't want this to recede. As a matter of fact, I'd love for it to pop out a little bit so that I don't have this divot right here. So you can go in with as much or as little contour as you like. And let's make sure we press it up into the hairline. Just happy we got a shower today, ladies. And now I'm just tapping on this outer perimeter here so that, one, if I go like this, it's gonna blend away. I don't wanna do that, but I don't want any harsh lines. That's why I flick it up into the hairline and just tap here so that it looks very seamless. But you'll see it's already started to look brighter in the center of my face and darker on the perimeter. So let's go to the cheekbone. You wanna find the top of your ear, and you're gonna wanna stop at the outer corner of your eye, and you're gonna actually feel for your cheekbone. Squeeze your bristles together, tap in, just a little bit. Switch my arm this way, and now I'm gonna start back here because that's where I'm gonna distribute the most product first. Anywhere you tap first, the most product goes. And we want the darkest area to be here, not down here. We don't want to drag our face down. We don't want it to look muddy down here. So squeeze this together, tap up here, and I'm following my cheekbone to the outer corner of my eye. And now I'm just gonna flick up. And that's going to give me a very natural looking contour, but it still is creating that dimension and that lift. Same thing underneath the jawline. So I'm going back of the ear, underneath, and I'm gonna pull this down. No harsh lines on the neck. And there we have our contour. So the last step of our 3D foundation is brightener, and that's what a lot of people use the bunny tail end for. But it's very large and it's very dense. And for me, with somebody who has a lot of texture under my eyes, it just picks up too much product. So instead, I'm gonna use my ring finger just like I was before, and I'm gonna tap into my brightener, getting a small amount on. And now I'm going to this inner corner, but I'm going underneath this pocket of texture. I color corrected that area, so I've removed a lot of the darkness, but I still don't wanna emphasize the fine lines and wrinkles that I have. Outer corner. And now I'm gonna use what's left on my finger and just kind of marry together from the inner corner to the outer corner to give myself a nice pop of brightness without emphasizing texture. And I would do the same thing between the brows and down the nose. Between the brows is a highly textured area for people, so less is more. Right here and right here, we had some from our previous application, but we will blend that all out. Now I can take a look before I go into the next step, which is the perfector, which removes excess. Is there anywhere else that I want more coverage? Typically the 3D brush is going to give you medium coverage. It's hard to get natural coverage with this brush. It picks up a lot of product. So this is pretty good medium coverage. This is how you traditionally see a lot of people doing it. But with just a couple tweaks, you can really get more coverage. And I think we're good. So let's grab the perfector. This is the magic step for anybody who uses cream makeup, especially if you layer in these thin layers to get good coverage. You want to remove excess. This is how you get a skin-like finish. And this is how you make sure that you don't have any excess sitting in your fine lines and wrinkles. And this is a prepped. See how much makeup already came off? This is a prepped perfector, which means I ran it under cold water. I squeezed out all the excess water and I grabbed a microfiber cloth, squeezed it out again. And while I was doing this makeup, I let it dry to the point where now it's cool and damp, but it's not wet. If it's too wet, it's gonna like pull your makeup off in chunks. If it's too dry, if you're using it dry, it's not gonna do a whole lot at all. So I'm putting it anywhere. See, just that little bit of excess is going to make a huge difference. So I'm going anywhere that I have fine lines and wrinkles, I have strong marionette lines, and then anywhere that I just want to pop this over top to make sure that I don't have cakey or tacky feeling makeup. I can still get natural looking makeup and a pretty good level of coverage with this one brush, the perfector, and my finger. What do we do next? We perfect after the steps of the makeup that give coverage. Color corrector, main shade, which is your foundation, contour, and brightener, which is your concealer, all give coverage. So perfect after that. Now we have lip and cheek, illuminator, and bronzer, and those are all sheer. If you do this after those products, it's gonna pull a lot of that off because it's not the same formulation. It's meant to be more sheer. At this step, I like to do bronzer next. So if I'm using the 3D brush, I'm gonna tap in here and I'm just going to press and distribute this on what's considered the high points of your face, which is where you would naturally get like excess sun. Like maybe not sunburnt, but you get the glow first. So that high point, it's like where your face sticks out right here. This cheekbone area, you can go across the nose and the chin if you like. I personally don't like that as much because I have redness in my nose and redness in my chin, and bronzer is like straight warmth. So I don't want to pull any more warmth out other than the bronzy warmth that I'm gonna get versus the redness. And now I'm gonna just put a little bit down the neck to make sure that everything matches really well. And that is bronzer. Now let's finish this up with a little bit of lip and cheek. I'm gonna tap in. I'm gonna do my lip and cheek, 2 fingers out from the nose, smile. I'm gonna start here. And I'm just gonna take that up my contour line. Remember, this picks up a lot of product, so start light-handed. You can always build up. And now we can see our bronzer from the front because we put a little bit on the outer apples of our cheeks, but we also created a lifted look by putting it up the contour line, so we kind of get the best of both worlds. See it from the front, see it from the side. Now we can put a little bit on our lips because it is dual purpose, lip and cheek. Lip and cheeks are my favorite part of everything in Seint makeup. Now let's do a little bit of illuminator. In traditional makeup land, illuminator is what you're used to calling a highlighter, but since we call our foundation shades highlights, we call it an illuminator. My favorite way to apply an illuminator, regardless of the brush, is with the perfector. So all I'm gonna do is squeeze my perfector together, and today let's use, how about a little bit of rose gold? This is the only time that I'm gonna tell you that you can kind of sweep into your makeup and make sure that you get a generous amount. I feel like that was a little too generous, so I'm gonna tap it on my hand first just to remove anything that might feel like too much. And now I'm gonna go to the highest point here. You see that? See that additional glow? And that's it. I'm gonna add a little bit of illumination. I'm gonna flip this over and make sure that it's all blended together nicely. And then you can do your Cupid's bow if you like, just to pop that out a little bit. I even like to put a little bit down my nose. When you have some brightness in the center of your nose, it causes your nose to look slimmer. That's why when we nose contour, which I didn't show you, I completely forgot because I will never nose contour with this brush. Here, I'll show you real quick. If I was gonna nose contour, I'm going back to my finger. The purpose of nose contour is either to slim your nose if you want it to look slimmer by putting 2 stripes right down the middle, or to make it look wider if you need it to be wider by putting 2 stripes on the side. I am gonna go for the slimming effect. So I'm gonna grab my contour, start in between my eyes, and just pull down the center of the nose. Then you put your brightener down the middle. We'll blend this with our perfector. And you can even use, like I said, your illuminator for just that additional glow. If you nose contour, you do want to make sure that you have a little bit of brightener down the side of the nose. Remember, we're playing the game of light and dark. Dark recedes, light comes forward. You don't want just like a drastic nose contour strip. The magic of it working is when you add the brightener to the sides and down the middle. And then we can go back to our beauty blender. I just need to find a spot where I didn't put illuminator to make sure that we get rid of those lines. Okay, so what do we think? Do you guys see the difference? This is our kind of best practice for the 3D brush if you're somebody that has discoloration versus kind of the traditional way that you see it applied. And let me get in close here. And you'll see the emphasized texture here. So out here, here, you still see quite a bit of darkness from here where we don't see that same amount of texture. Like I still got some texture out here. It's just, I'm doing what I can to keep it minimized. Those are my best tips for how you can use the 3D brush. Again, I don't recommend it for a beginner, but I do think it's a really good brush for somebody who likes medium to full coverage once you understand how to get minimal product on here and really use it to cover a large area. And when you incorporate a couple of additional brushes, this brush can work really well. Just not my favorite for a beginner. Okay guys, if you have questions or there's another brush that you want to see, be sure to drop that in the comments below. As always, I am happy to color match you, especially if you're struggling with discoloration and getting good coverage from your Seint makeup. I'm sure it's just an easy tweak that we can make. So I will definitely put a color match link in the description. And thank you guys for joining me, looking my most beauteous today in real mom life. You are my people. As always, thank you for being here, and I will see you again next week.